For two reasons. One, when I first started my journey, an African man took me to a bookshop in Calgary, like a new age bookstore, and he took me to the wall at the back where all the what do you call them? The posters for all the workshops and whatever. It was all on the board.
Oh yeah.
And this was like, yeah, this was 1998, so it's at the height of the new age workshop, uh, you know, um, lecture movement. And he just took me to this
Yeah.
board and he said, if somebody has real ancient wisdom, they're not going to be on a board like this. They're going to be way behind the scenes. You have to go find them. And that was the greatest gift I could ever get, because it was the realization that these people do exist, but they're not out. Say they're not in front of the camera. They're not. They're not
Yeah.
making an organization out of what they know. They're living what they know and sharing it. And it led me to 8 years of very intense practice. So for the one you're probably referring
Wow.
to is I was in a temple at Karnak. There's a small temple beside Karnak Temple. It's known as the Temple of Khonsu. It's one of my favorite little temples in Egypt, partially because it's so energetically clear and clean, and tourists kind of don't ever go there. And I would go there every day. I would go to the Temple of Khonsu every day. And so by the third or fourth day, the guards got to know me. They knew who I was. They didn't bother me. I would bring them some gifts, and they would just let me do my thing. And
Awesome.
so I was in one of the side chambers, and I was sitting there for like 2 hours, maybe, just sitting. And that's one of the most important things. Like, I had 2 hours just sitting in this room on a stone, just staring at the wall. And I'd kind of been at first focused on the hieroglyphs and on the images, and just getting a sense of what's being said on the wall, what the story is. But it was kind of just half in, half out. I wasn't really focused on it. I was just calmly sitting there. And then after about 2 hours, yeah, I could just call it it began to shimmer. It began to become transparent. And then the front layer of the reliefs and the hieroglyphs were gone, and there was like a completely different wall in front of me. And that's when I realized these ancient cultures, they built whatever they built holographically, in that there are multiple layers built on anything. So when we go in and we see a certain set of walls and a certain set of reliefs and glyphs and carvings, that's just the most dense layer of the building process. That as we shift, you can go to deeper and deeper layers, and they're just as real as the one we see out in front. And that's when I realized just to what kind of level the ancients were working on, that they were, even when they were building structures, they were building them on multiple layers, on multiple levels, of almost like different levels of dimension. We humans have always kind of lived through mythology, and right through like the 1950s and 60s, even in Western schools, children were still taught Greek and Roman mythology.
Hmm.
That started to leave in the 1970s, and it's no longer a part of school curriculum anymore. But that began to be taken over by movies. Movies have become the mythology and the story of particularly very fairly well known movies, become the like a glue for people to gain ideas of morality and society and things to do. The problem is that the movies generally are being shaped by the same people who control the world, and one of the ways to control the world is you control perception. All you have to do is to get people to think the way you want them to think, and then people will do what you want them to do. So, I mean, it's not called television programming in English for by accident, right? The
Right.
TV is programming the mind. On the other side, though, there does come at times certain movies, certain television shows that are presenting deeper layers of reality. And on some level, I think you have to do that, because if you kept, if everything came out that it was sort of just fluff, it was just simplistic, action movie, goof movie, there wouldn't be this feeling, because people are looking for knowledge. In the ancient mythology is true knowledge. And I think they almost have to present some of it, or they lose the medium.
But I've heard you talk about NPCs, and
in a simulation, there could be a point to be made that these elite, they might just be aspects of the simulation. Who really gets close to a Henry Kissinger or a Klaus Schwab? I've talked to so many guests who say they've been in the elevator with a person in this circle or something, and they feel soulless or they feel different. When you met the Queen, you're not supposed to look into her eyes, but Adam Curry did, and he said he saw nothing. So these are weird aspects. Maybe these people aren't even human, but they're part of the game itself.
I started noticing this. Wow, like the first one I ran into was like 1999. There's two stories there. One though was a negative story and it's a positive story, but in both cases I didn't think I was dealing with a human in any way, shape, or form. One was a guy in a bookstore. I was there to meet a friend of mine, and this guy was just staring at me. And when I looked at him, his eyes were like dark. I wouldn't necessarily black, but they were just dark. He was staring at me and not blinking. And I had the sense that he was trying to like almost like suck the soul out of me. And I remember I just stood there and I looked at him. And I was in a staring contest with him, and I was mentally projecting, if you come a step closer, I'm going to put my hands around your throat and I'm going to kill you. And we just stood there, and I don't know whether it's a minute or whether it was 50 minutes. I have no idea. We just stared at each other. And then finally, after a certain amount of time, this thing just turned around and walked out of the store. My friend had seen all of this occur. He had seen this taking place. And when it was done, I remember I was rigid. I was like a tree. I was so tight with, intensity. And he just put his arm around me and said, you can never back down from them. Otherwise, they'll walk over you the rest of your life. And so that was a powerful thing to start with, to get that recommendation. And then the second story was, I was taking some friends to a stone circle that I like to take people to in Norway. And I was in one stone circle, they were in another stone circle. And all of a sudden, this woman just appeared out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere, and walked into the circle and had this conversation with them. And right away, I could see from where I was a distance away, that she was a little transparent, almost like a tuner on a radio. She would come in, she would go out. She would come in, she would go out. But when she walked away, I walked over to my friends and said, so do you remember every single thing she said to you? Why? Because that wasn't a person you were talking to. What do you mean it's not a person? That's not a person you were talking to. I asked, where did she come from? Well, kind of over there. Well, what's over there? Well, it's the forest. Where did she go? Well, yeah, she didn't go down the pathway. She kind of there. She kind of just, I guess, into the forest. Right. She came out of the forest and she went into the forest. What was the first thing she said to you? Oh, she said that she's the protector of this area. Protector of this area? Do you think some 68-year-old woman is coming around here with a lawnmower and some cutters and is looking after the stone circle? No. So do you understand that you are dealing with something not human? And they finally began to, and in this case, this was a very positive thing, probably. So I think we've got so many out there that have a human exterior to us, but one way or another are not. So we have to recognize that we've got negative sides of this, which you might call soulless robots. And we've also got other things that seem to be an extension of the natural world, or an extension of the total power of this place, that are also in some way offering their help and offering their assistance. And we sort of need to know when we come across them that we are, and which one we've got. There's a place that's not in the Matrix. The Matrix is vast. Plato's cave is vast. It's a giant. It's so enormous. Our mind can't even think of the layers and simulations and dimensions that are all a part of this. But there is something truly outside of the cave. There is something that is whole and total and complete, and where there is. Someone asked me to describe what this home is, and I said the very simple answer: it's a place where there's no lies and there's no deception. It's a place where all there is a
seeing what's possible for myself. And
Oh yeah, I'm
yeah,
fully enjoying what I'm doing. I'm
yeah,
fully enjoying my own personal awareness, but I'm realizing that this is just a giant, you know, this is a place where everything is just suffering 24 hours a day. And just because I'm personally not in this moment doesn't mean I'm forgetting what's happening to everyone and everything else. And so when you realize you're living in a reality where every single thing we're being presented is false, is a lie, but nothing is being given to us with any kind of truth to it, I have to start stepping back and saying, well, what a piece of crap world then. It's like somewhere somebody should be giving us something honest and true, and whatever honest and true we find, we have to fight for it so hard. We have to battle for every little tiny nugget of truth. And so that's why I kind of say this is just such a crappy place, because you shouldn't have to fight that hard for truth.
Yeah, but how do you know?
What do you mean, how do I know?
How do you know that you shouldn't have to fight that hard for truth?
Part of what the soul is. It's like it's the beginning stages of the battery. That in a sense, see, this is what I think the demiurge did, the creator of this place did, which is sick but ingenious. It created a simulation, a giant computer simulation that needs power to get it to run. I mean, imagine like the size of multiple universes, multiple dimensions, multiple layers, how much energy such a system would need. The ingenious part is, let's build a video game and then get the characters in the video game to generate the power to keep the video game running.
Wow.
And I think that's what we're under. This idea of Robert Monroe and Luce from Far Journeys, this idea that we are, in a sense, only reason we're here is to act as an energy power source to keep the thing running, to keep us here, to keep us so we can battery and run the system. It's like a giant wheel of which doesn't actually benefit us at all. That's another thing that I've really, I think, blown out of the water with Eggs to the Cave, is that this is not a school. We're not here to learn anything. And quite simply, that is revealed to me by the reincarnation memory wipe. We've had a million lives, even as I've had experiences of multiple, what you would call parallel realities of myself. So I've lived through many different versions of this realm as me in this particular world. And if you don't remember any of that, then that means you're having to do every experience again and again and again. And that means your learning is zero. And if the learning of all of these lives is zero, then it cannot be a school. And once we step back and start asking that question, what if this is not a school? What if this is not here for our great learning and our great involvement? Then we have to step back and ask, well, then what is it? And so for me, it's like like you talked about the TV show Westworld. That's, I think, a perfect example of our reality. The robots in Westworld are us. That's us. We are the Westworld robots.
Doesn't matter what side you pick. Like the average, particularly, a religious person can say, we're fighting Satan. Where's all this fucking traffic coming from? There's never traffic, except when I want to come and do a video. Interesting, huh? That's how they would normally describe it, right? We have to defeat Satan. We have to defeat Satan for the powers of good and, fix the dream. And okay, sounds nice, but you don't understand that what the demiurge did when it created duality is it created both sides of the potential game that you're going to play in here, and the demiurge doesn't care. The demiurge doesn't care which game you pick. The demiurge wins. As long as you're, what's that movie from War Games, right, in 1983? As long as you're picking a side, you're playing. The only winning move is not to play. The only winning move you can make is not to play, is not to choose the games that the demiurge has set up for us. That's, in a sense, that's the inner spiritual warfare, is to reject the lies of the matrix, of Plato's cave, and to put all of our focus on that which is true, that which is home, which is not here. I hate to tell you that. The true world, the true reality is not here. It's a simulation. And the simulation but is a copy. And here's the thing, it's copied on a previous simulation. This simulation, whenever it started, say it started in 1850, I don't know, but whenever it started, it was copied on the simulation up to the previous simulation up to 1850. And then they just copied it and made this. Fully know, and you're going to continue your work to figure it out, right? I have a hat on, by the way. This is one of my golf hats, and I put it on because of the X on the hat. I think the X number, because you're seeing that all over the place. That, that's not an accident that Elon Musk wants that to be the new name of Twitter. This X symbol is showing up everywhere. And to me, I think it's a symbol of that will come at the end of the simulation. It's, in a sense, it's a cross, or I can't do it with my two fingers because I'm holding on this, but it's a cross that's turned sideways. And that X symbol becomes a multiplication symbol. It's a very strange, has very strange uses other than just as a simple letter of the alphabet. It's the only alphabetic letter that becomes that also becomes a mathematical sign. And I get the sense that it's symbolic of the end of the simulation. You start seeing the X everywhere. And I've looked into a lot of the symbolism of what X might mean throughout the ancient world. I'll walk back. And so I'm wearing it because it was a reminder for myself to talk about it, and for you guys to start thinking about, notice how often you're going to see that appearing, you might say, in the mainstream, in the media, in movies, in television, whatever. That's going to come up a lot.